Hey, women of welcome. How are you doing today? I am coming to you with a really important conversation. It's one about a brand new report that World Relief and our friends at the National Association of Evangelicals have put out here lately. And I don't want us to miss this report. It's a really important report that's got some really good information. And we're going to be talking with the president of the National Association of Evangelicals, Walter Kim. He's coming on here live, and it'll just be really important for us to hang. We're gonna have a pretty brief conversation about this. So I'm gonna wait here just for 1 second. Stay with me while we get Walter Kim on here to talk with us from the NAE. I don't know if you all have seen much about this report. We've mentioned it in our newsletter before, but while I'm waiting for him to join on, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So my name, if you don't know, my name is Bree Stensrud, and I'm the director of Women of Welcome, and we are a community of women who want to engage the issues of immigrants and refugees from the lens of our faith instead of from partisan politics. We want to pull it out of partisan politics, and we want to really engage with what Scripture says, not about U.S. immigration policy, but about immigrants and refugees. So this new report that came out a couple of weeks ago, really at the end of March, was a report that came out that World Relief and the NAE put out, along with some other partners that Walter's going to tell us about. It came out and it had some really sobering statistics and some major implications for American Christian families here in the U.S. And so I'm going to look for him right now, and then I'm going to, here we go. I'm going to look for him right now in just a second. All right, stick with me. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. Hello, hello. Here we go. Hello, there he is.
Hi, Bree.
Good to see you. So glad that you could make it. Thank you
Oh,
so much.
of course. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. This is great. Okay. Women of Welcome. This is the president of the National Association of Evangelicals, Walter Kim. And we're going to be talking about this one part of the body study. So again, I just want to reiterate, Women of Welcome, just if you're new here, we've had a ton of new people really since the beginning of the year that have joined the community. And I just want to assure you, Women of Welcome exists for the health of the church. And there are many churches in America that are doing ministry really well toward our immigrant brothers and sisters in this whole very complicated immigration space. And they're doing it based on the belief that immigration is not just simply a political issue, but is also a deeply biblical issue as well. And yet, there are still many, many churches in America that remain silent on the issue and see it only as a political issue. And therefore, in my belief, I think we've developed a pretty big blind spot about the realities that our brothers and sisters in Christ in our own communities are facing. And we want to get this right. We want to enter into this from the lens of our faith. And we know the Bible has a lot to say about immigrants and refugees. It has nothing to say about U.S. immigration policy, but it has so many passages and verses and scriptures and implications about immigrants and refugees and God's heart for them, about how we treat, talk, and feel about our immigrant brothers and sisters. And so we want to get this right. We want to engage well. And the church should be leading in unity in this space. And we should be leading well. So what we're going to talk about, just give some highlights today about, is this report called One Part of the Body. And it's wonderful to have Walter Kim with us because the NAE partnered with World Relief and some other partners that he's going to tell us a little bit about to bring this to light. And this is really important because we're just going to highlight a few of the major sobering statistics and data points that should really impact the way we think about this moving forward and how we communicate with our churches and church leadership moving forward. So first of all, Walter, thanks for being here. Can you tell people, I mean, I think everybody knows about the NAE, the National Association of Evangelicals, kind of like theoretically, but we're not exactly sure. Some of us, who are kind of on the day to day, just kind of getting through the day, aren't exactly sure what the NAE does, what the mission is behind that. And so can you tell us a little bit about the NAE and what your role is in that?
Yeah, thanks, Bree, and thanks again for this conversation and work that you're doing very fundamentally. which I think expresses the good news of Jesus in some compelling ways. And really, the good news is at the center of what it means to be a part of the NAE. So our membership includes a broad range of denominations, various streams of denominations, Pentecostal, Presbyterian, Methodist, Mennonites, networks, Christian ministries, educational institutions, nonprofit aid organizations, really a slew of organizations, denominations, church networks, ministries that are part of the NAE. And our purpose, the mission has long been to equip evangelicals for a more vital life within the church and a vital witness outside of the church, and to represent evangelicals in the public square. This includes advocacy work. It includes conferences and webinars and resources for the equipping of the church. It includes an application of what we believe to be an expansive, comprehensive implication of the gospel for our lives and we believe the gospel should touch every aspect of our lives, both personally but also corporately, nationally, in our communities. And we want to do this in a third kind of way. We don't want to go into that kind of cultural capitulation that just blends into society, but we don't want to go into that cultural warfare that seeks to bludgeon society. We really want to represent the beauty, the truth, the goodness of the gospel of peace. And so it shows up in these various ways: chaplaincy programs in the military, healthcare, advocacy work in the Hill and various state agencies, equipping and accelerating the work of the good news through denominations and Christian ministries working in partnership in the belief that we are better together. And World Relief is our humanitarian arm, and that works in refugee spaces, as you're well aware of, and immigrant services. So there's a bunch of things that we do, but really at the core of all of it is the fundamental belief that the good news of Jesus Christ, the evangel, what it means to truly be an evangelical, that it is as vibrant and vital today as it was 2,000 years ago.
I'm going to throw you a little curveball that I didn't put in our questions when we were talking earlier. But I mean, I do think that it's important since we have you on. It's just so interesting to think. Tell me just like, what is your take on the fact that the term evangelical has become so political? Like, what does it really mean to be an evangelical, part of the evangelical church here in America that has nothing to do with politics? What does that really have to do with if you are an evangelical, an American evangelical?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally it has long stood for a belief in the renewing power of the good news of Jesus Christ. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. When the Protestant Reformation happened with Martin Luther, the term that he first chose to describe what was going on, what he was being pursuing, was evangelical. Before they were called Protestants, they declared as evangelicals because their fundamental belief during the Protestant Reformation was a recovery of the good news of Jesus Christ for every person's life. And when Wesley and Wilberforce and Whitefield, these great evangelists in the 1700s, then 1800s, were seeking to describe what they were trying to pursue in the advocacy of a good news that was for personal salvation in the great revivals, but it was also for social transformation in the abolition of slavery. The term that they chose to describe themselves that would hold Anglicans together and others was the term evangelical.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing again in the 1950s when there was a deep desire to say, what is this renewal movement coming out of World War II? What is this renewal movement that is really connecting people from different denominational backgrounds with this vision of the good news that would lead to the formation of ministries like World Vision, Renewal of Compassion, or World Relief, and campus ministries like InterVarsity had being renewed, or Campus Crusade at that time being formed. Like, what holds these types of groups together? Or Billy Graham Crusades? It was the term evangelical, because it was a recovery of the sense that the good news both has personal transformation, but it would lead to things like World Vision, World Relief, Compassion, eventually International Justice Mission, women of welcome. I mean, this outworking of the good news of Jesus Christ. That is the core. Has it become politicized? Absolutely. Have there been ways in which segments, and I say this carefully and intentionally, segments of evangelicalism have voted in certain ways? Well, of course. That's just historically, you can point that out. But that's made for a particular political story that's been accentuated by the media, sometimes capitalized by folks that are, been called conflict entrepreneurs. You're going to get more likes, you're going to get more hits, more money if you pursue a very polarized way of approaching life. But historically, this is not what it's meant to be an evangelical. And it's certainly not what we're pursuing at the NAE.
Well, it's encouraging to hear because you feel like most of the conversation that dominates the headlines, it really has some lot of negative connotations about being an evangelical. And for those of us who have a high view of Scripture, who believe in the death and resurrection and the divinity of Jesus, I mean, we want to anchor, we want to hold to these good things about what unites us as evangelicals. And I mean, since you're over this breadth and span of denominations and leadership and churches across the country, I can understand why it'd be really important for this report that we're going to talk about and highlight here in a second, why that'd be really important for you all to champion and highlight. What I want to know is, what do you see in terms of the entire spectrum, the landscape of the evangelical church in America? What is maybe very quickly, what is one of the biggest challenges that you see? And then maybe what is one of the biggest hope points for you when you look across the whole landscape here in America?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest challenges is a result of one of the biggest strengths of evangelicalism. Evangelicalism has always been entrepreneurial. It's always been practical and innovative. And that has resulted in all sorts of renewal efforts. Again, campus ministries, educational institutions. It is the impulse of evangelicals to say the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, should be creatively applied. It's been deeply personal, the personal testimony, personal salvation, evangelism. These are all strengths. But the flip side of it is it doesn't really have a developed theology and discipleship for the public implications of the good news of Jesus Christ. Really strong for the personal implications. That's why we can go to retreats to help our prayer lives, or we have books that teach us how to have more integrity at work, or seminars and discipleship relationships to strengthen our marriages and family life. But how do you get discipled with issues of social concern or political polarization? Where do we go for retreats on that? And yet the gospel has always been about personal transformation and public transformation. When Jesus came and he unrolled a scroll at Isaiah to introduce himself to the world in Luke chapter 4, he said, "The Spirit of the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news, not just good news to personal salvation, but good news to the poor, freedom for the oppressed, sight for the blind, release for the captive, the year of the Lord's favor." There was this seamless integration. And I think this is one of the real challenges that we face, is we've been so extraordinarily strong with the personal transformation stuff, personal discipleship, which we absolutely should hold. I want Christians to bear the fruit of the Spirit personally. But it is the weakness of understanding that when Jesus proclaimed the good news, right from the get-go, he was including the implications for public life. What does it have to do with the poor generally? Prison, disability issues. I mean, this was all part of the good news. And I think we've been deeply impoverished in our imagination, theology, and discipleship in this area. What's the biggest hope? I would say we're at an inflection point where we have the opportunity, then rather than complaining about Christianity moving from the middle of society in America to the margins, instead of complaining about something lost, to view this as the greatest opportunity that the church in America has had for two things. One, for really understanding deeply what it means to be dependent upon God and not dependent upon cultural levers of power, which is the reality of churches all throughout the world. And two, there is a demographic transformation occurring right now, the single greatest demographic transformation. Is it causing social turmoil as we're trying to figure out what it means to be American? I mean, look at my face. This could not be envisioned, the president of the Evangelical being an Asian American man. It couldn't have been envisioned, just a couple of decades ago. I think there's an amazing opportunity for us to see the future vision of the people of God, every nation, tribe, language, people represented, what we glory in Revelation chapter 7, that we actually get to experience that now in America. We don't have to wait for heaven. We can experience this. And I think that brings a lot of hope and opportunity for revitalization.
I love that because it does cast a new imagination for people to have curiosity and courage about and deciding and choosing where we are going to go as one body moving forward. And this is one thing that we want to talk about is just this private transformation that we have, this personal transformation we have with Jesus Christ that we are to make public, then is supposed to change and transform these social systems around us because God has placed us in those very specific places in our own communities, our congregations, and in this country. And so one of the things that I just want to pull out of, there's so many immigration headlines and news stories going on. So many of them are quite negative and just really hard to read. And yet this came out a couple of weeks ago, this report that UN World Relief and several other partners did a couple of weeks ago. And I wanted to make sure that we highlight it because I feel like it is incredibly sobering. And it does call us into a kind of right-mindedness about, and just giving us open eyes about what is possible in the days ahead for American Christian families and the church. And so, again, everybody, we're going to link to this in the comments and in the video, and it's going to be in our newsletter this week. But the report is called One Part of the Body, and it showcases the potential impact for evangelical and Catholic families too, not just evangelical families, but Catholic families in America. And what I mean by that is that the report evaluates what our current trajectory of staying on the path of mass deportations with really very few limits attached to them, these actions and policies, the course that we're on, and the dramatic effect that it could have on Christian families. So, Walter, can you tell us a little bit about the report? And it's a very specific report. It really just is about how deportations are going to affect and impact the church. So my question is, why this report and why now?
Yeah. The one part of the body is drawn from 1 Corinthians 12, where it says, we're all part of the body together. And when one part suffers, we all suffer. If one part rejoices, we all rejoice. And so whether or not there are immigrants within your own particular local church and community for which this is an issue keenly and immediately felt, the current environment of threats of mass deportation and the fear that provokes, whether or not that's something you personally feel, we actually believe as Christians that we're connected with the worldwide body of Christ. We're connected with Christian communities across America. They are our brothers and sisters. And so why? Well, theologically, we're connected. And an issue that impacts one part of the body impacts all of us. Why now? Because the concerns are real, they're pressing. Churches some have seen catastrophic declines. Some have seen their pastors unlawfully detained or threatened. There are instances where families are being pulled apart because one member of the family, although the others, they're married to a U.S. citizen, one member of the family came under circumstances that may have been illegal, or in fact may be illegal because they've been given temporary legal status under humanitarian parole acts, but now those statuses are being threatened. And so even the situation of being illegal is not a clean situation.
Yeah.
And what is really surprising is that this is not just a segment that could be neatly put aside. Up to 10 million Christian immigrants are present and currently vulnerable to deportation. That is
That's
an
number
astonishing.
is just so
Yeah.
mind-boggling. I mean, to me, that was one of the most important things when I was reading the study. Again, we're going to link to the study in the comments. We're going to link to the study in our newsletter so that you guys can see that. But I mean, to me, that number that felt like catastrophic. Like if that were really to happen, if 10 million Christians were to be deported from America, the impacts of
Yeah.
that would be so far reaching. I mean, so to me, Walter, I want to know, what do you think were the most important findings of the study overall? That 10 million number seems so like mind blowing, but there are other really huge data points that came out of the study too. What did you feel like were the most important findings of the study overall?
Yeah. So, the 10 million Christian immigrants present in the US right now are vulnerable to deportation. Um, Maybe the thought is, well, okay, that's an astonishing number, but there must be millions and millions and millions of those that are being deported who are the criminal influences that we're rightfully, as a nation, wanting to see deported. But overall, about 80% of those who are at risk of deportation are Christians. So it's actually not the case that the vast span of people that are being threatened with deportation are folks that are these criminal influences. Millions are Christians who are working hard in their communities, who many of them came under a legal status that is now being threatened to become illegal.
Mhm.
And that in the end, about 80% of those who are actually in this category of deportation are Christians. They are our brothers and sisters. And on top of that, nearly 7 million US citizens, US citizens, are living within the households of those who are at risk of deportation. So it is an unfolding, a rippling effect of people who are touched on this, and these citizens, these citizens are spouses, these are minor children who have been born in the U.S., who could lose a parent, a brother, a sibling, and again, this is really catastrophic in terms of its potential impact. And those are important things for us. We're not saying that you have to therefore advocate for a very particular policy out of this report.
Mm-hmm.
We want people just to be informed and
Mm-hmm.
prayerfully consider the implications of what is unfolding and what possibly will unfold as a catastrophic impact on the church in America.
So, how many, you guys broke this down as far as how many evangelical families, how many Catholic families, how many Christian families would be impacted? Could you give us some of those stats?
Yeah. Of the 80% of those at risk of deportation who are Christians, when you think about that number as a whole, over 60% are Catholic, about 13 to 18%, somewhere in there, are evangelicals, and 7% are those who adhere to some other Christian tradition, Orthodox, mainline of Protestant of some sort.
So you have the percent of those who are at significant risk, the big number is, all is 8% of all Christians in the US would be impacted. 18% are Catholics, 6% evangelicals, and 3% are part of these other Christian groups. But again, the overwhelming majority that are at risk of deportation, if we're staying on this current trajectory, are Christian families.
Yes, yes. So, yes, exactly.
Okay. So, you work with and you talk with leaders across various denominations, various, immigrant or different ethnic congregations all across the country. When this study came out, when this report came out, what was the most surprising data point to you personally? I mean, obviously, because have this far reaching relationship with so many different congregations, you probably weren't surprised that it was going to be a big impact in terms of what mass deportation could do to the American church. But what was the one thing that you were like, whoa,
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. The church as a whole, the body needs to know this data point.
Yeah, I would say, yes, the 10 million, I mean, that's just mind-boggling, as you've noted, but it's the 80% of all those who are at risk of deportation are Christians. That to me was astonishing, because it really is counter to the general narrative that we're getting rid of foreign influences or influences that are by and large threatening to the church and the church's place in America. That to be a friend of the church or Christians or evangelicals in America is to be pro deportation, because in some ways it's kind of winnowing and purifying American life, or however we might wish to view it. And yet, by and large, this strikes me as one of the greatest church decline strategies possible. And when we think about it those ways, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And we can often think about it as affecting perhaps the Hispanic community, primarily, but it really is many immigrant communities. I've recently run across an instance in which an African pastor has been detained. I mean, this, this is a
You want
pastor.
you want this immigrant here. You really do. I mean,
Yes.
I want us to just kind of step back and just hold the nuance here, especially for those who are new to the Women of Welcome community. And that is that Women of Welcome is not against deportations in theory, and the fact that we want to deport those who should not be here, who are causing harm and who are causing chaos, violent criminals. We absolutely believe that the government has a right, and they also have really kind of the blessing of American citizens and of Christians to derail evil intentions and to deport violent criminals. So that's not what we're having a conversation about right now. Right now, what we're having a conversation about is, what do you do with immigrants who are here and that don't have a criminal record, who are contributing and who are members of not only our communities in our country, but also our congregations. And they may not attend maybe for me, my white evangelical church, but they are attending churches across the country. And when you think of all of the Christians in the US, and you think about all of those who could be deported. So you have all the Christians in the US, and then you have the subset of anyone who could be deported in the US under this current trajectory that we're on. 80% of that big number are Christians.
Yeah.
To me, it's like you said, it is the biggest church decline strategy I've ever heard of. And it makes us go back to what you said very, very poignantly and very eloquently at the beginning, just about how our faith as American Christians, one of the things that's been so challenging is that while it's beautiful that we have these personal relationships and this personal renewal, that we have been very shy and lacking in courage to actually have that renewal affect the social landscape around us. And we have kind of made it, well, if I'm okay. But again, according to scripture, we are part of the body. So when one part of the body suffers, we all suffer. And when you think about 80% of those who could leave this country forcibly are our brothers and sisters in Christ, to me, I'm like, where are we going? Who are we talking to?
Yeah.
What do we need to say? And which again leads me to my next question to you, and that is when this report came out 3 weeks ago, have you seen any kind of energy or any kind of meaningful coverage of this that would give you hope that there is potential to have more nuanced and better conversations about mass deportations?
Absolutely, Bree. I mean, there's been media coverage that wait a second. There's an angle to this mass deportation story that has not been covered, and it's a very different way of looking at the issues. Just did a conversation with BBC, and NPR's run a piece on this, and so there definitely is interest on this. Opportunities within the realm of public policy and advocacy. This has raised up fresh, uh, I would say, impetus to say, wait, can we come up with a creative solution? And in fact, evangelicals really, when you look more deeply, are keenly interested in coming up with a creative solution. So earlier this year, before this study, we also partnered with Lifeway and World Relief to do a study on evangelical beliefs on immigration. It came out in January and is a little bit of a precursor to this study that we're talking about today. And in that study, it was very clear, 90% of evangelicals think strong borders, national security is vital. About 90% also said every immigrant should be treated with dignity. Whoa, okay, this is becoming a little bit more complex. Very high, around 90% also said that families should be kept together.
Right.
Okay, well, that doesn't fit narratives that we often hear about in the media. And what was astonishing was that when asked the question about deportations, this study Lifeway did found that less than 1/5 of evangelicals support mass deportation. And this is including those who voted for President Trump.
Right.
So
Which
less than 1/5 actually support those for deportation. If we can just come up with a creative solution, like if you have been in the US for 10 years or more, if you would be willing to pay a fine as restitution for any violations of an immigration law, if you are married to a US citizen and have children who are US citizens, when you create some of these nuances, you find that there's an incredible appetite among evangelicals to say, there's got to be a different way. There's got to be a different way to secure our borders, to treat people with dignity, and to ensure the economic and social, and I would say spiritual vitality of American communities with all the contributions that these immigrant communities have made, immigrant churches have made. And if we just come up with a creative solution, and these solutions have been floated in the past, and I think are being refloated now with a deep sense of urgency to find another way forward that I think is morally justifiable, appealing, and it contains national security interests and is expressive of a deep sense of justice, both what it would mean to have just laws that are supported, but what it would mean to treat people justly.
I mean, at Women of Welcome, we constantly say we want safe and secure borders, we need thorough vetting, and we also want the humane treatment of people who we believe are made in the image and likeness of God. And while that solution seems like, well, that makes sense, it is more complicated when you take it to the Hill. For whatever reason, there's all kinds of other opinions in there. But there are solutions that evangelicals have been throwing towards Capitol Hill and begging for attention for, including what you just mentioned, which is restitution-based immigration reform, where if you were to meet some certain criteria and you can prove that you've been paying taxes, that you've been, staying out of negative law enforcement encounters, and that you're married to a citizen, or that you've been held a job, you have a certain number of references, and you pay a fine, then there's a pathway for you. Again, like you said, I think there's an amazing appetite, not only just between Christians, but just for Americans who want to get this right. And I believe, and I know you believe, that Christians can lead the way in unity. And I do think it does take courage to read through this report and then also share it with somebody, to share it with your pastor, to share it with your local senator or congressman or congresswoman. It's going to take some courage, but it also is the right thing to do. And what we've been wanting to say all along is that the government has a role to protect citizens, but it also has a role to uphold the Constitution, and it also has a role to uphold our values as Americans, to treat people, especially vulnerable populations, as human beings who can and do contribute to this country. So let me ask you this. I have two more questions and then I will let you go. What can the everyday Christian, hey, Walter, I'm not leading, I'm not a president of some major organization, I don't have a lot of weight to throw around. What can I do with this actual report? What should I do?
Yeah. One, pray. And, pray that a deep sense of personal formation. I want to build upon the strength of evangelicalism in America. Pray for a deep sense of personal transformation, for compassion, for empathy. Pray for national leaders. 1 Timothy 2 exhorts us to do that. Pray for the unity and vitality of the church in its witness. When Jesus, on the night before he was betrayed, gave us a prayer in John chapter 17, it was the unity of the church that was reflective of his unity with the Father that was so essential to our witness. So pray. Pray because it's a mission issue, it's a witness issue. Pray because we're exhorted to pray for our leaders. 2, learn and share exactly what you've counseled. Read the report, share it with someone else, discuss it. 3, I would say build relationships with people who are different from you. And it could just simply be a conversation and a hello that you begin to have. Maybe it's someone at the grocery store that's working, that's putting the food away on the shelf, that looks different from you. And just even a hello to begin to humanize people who don't look like you, and to realize maybe we actually have a whole lot more in common, and we're knit together in this extraordinary way that God has put us together. And lastly, I would say advocate. Women of Welcome does some phenomenal work in terms of relational experiences and your border visits, the kind of group discussions and experiential learning that you do, I think is a fabulous way to bring all of us together. Prayerful, relationship building, advocacy opportunities, learning opportunities. But it's the advocacy part that I think might be a portion that is new for people. So if you go to the NAE website under Take Action, you'll see that there's a link where we make it easy. There's a form letter that's written. You just punch in your zip code, and it will help you write a letter to congressional leaders, Senate leaders, where you can voice your perspective on issues related to deportation and a number of other issues as well. This might be an area that will feel new to some of your viewers, but pray, relate, learn, share what you've learned, enter into the experiences, and advocate.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the most, fearful things people have about immigration is that they have to be an expert about everything. And so in order for them to be able to speak up with any kind of confidence, that they need to be an expert. And I guess I just want to remind, especially the Women of Welcome audience, is that you don't have to be an expert. What you can do is you can take one faithful step at a time. And this is an amazing report that you could simply drop in an email to your pastor and say, I think this might be something that we should pray about as an elder board, or this might be something that we should pray about in our small groups, or I just thought you might be interested in seeing this because it feels like it would have a massive impact on the American church body. And I mean, so you don't have to have all the answers. It would simply be a courageous share that I think would be important. I also just would encourage you to call, just like Walter just mentioned, to call and tell your elected officials, have you seen this report? Do you know about this? Do you know how this is going to impact my faith community? And I think that's really, really important. So, okay, most people want to know, how do I pray? This is my last question. How do you pray in light of these findings? You have 10 million potentially impacted Christian families in the U.S. evangelicals, Catholics, and other Christians alike. How do we even pray when you have these massive numbers like this that could be impacted?
I think when we find ourselves overwhelmed with statistics or an issue that feels monumental, like you just described, who am I? What do I really know in this? How am I going to respond? That we forget that one of the most incredible gifts that God has given to us is the gift of prayerful empathy. That we really are a body, and that we could pray, Lord, break my heart for the things that break your heart. Break my heart for the things that break the hearts of my brothers and sisters in Christ. Break my heart for the lost opportunity to be a witness for Jesus in this moment. Break my heart with the things that cause Jesus pain and heartbreak when his body is divided. So pray for a deep sense of empathy, heartbrokenness, but also, secondly, pray for courage. Again, I go back to the 1 Timothy 2 passage where we're exhorted to pray for our leaders. Pray for them by name. Learn who your congressional leaders are. Pray for them by name. And as you share that report, send it with a prayer. The last thing I would say is we often think about when we read a report, we check things or write notes on the side for things that we learn or want to study more or fact check. I would say take all those moments where we would normally check something to the side or write a note and turn that into a prayer point. Stop and actually pray over the bullet points of the report. You'll see in the report stories of individuals deeply impacted. Pray with imagination for this person and for people that you could imagine who are like that. And so I would say pray through that report and not just plan how to use that report.
It's really, really good. And we have to remember when these big numbers come out that there are individuals and individual stories behind that. So whether you are walking with someone who could potentially be affected or you're not feeling close proximity in this space, but yet you want to get this right, this is a great report to read. And it is a wonderful resource for you to have great prayer points for the individual who is behind that big number. So Mr. Kim, thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for your insights. Thank you for commissioning this report with World Relief and the other partners. We're going to link this in the comments. We're going to link this in our stories and in our newsletter. So don't worry, we'll get it to you in all the places. So thank you so much, Walter.
Thanks, Bree.
God bless.
Really appreciate you.
All right. Talk to you soon.